tensions between China and the Philippines over the disputed South China Sea are increasing. The Chinese Coast Guard.
Scarborough, clear! Scarborough, clear! Scarborough, China's Coast Guard mission number 21559. This is MMOB 3002.
Why are two of the world's biggest powers so fixated on a single Southeast Asian nation? The Philippines has suddenly become the stage for a great power tug of war, and it's not hard to see why. The South China Sea is no longer just a busy shipping corridor. It has become one of the most contested maritime regions on the planet. China's spectacular economic ascent is inseparably tied to this sea, while the United States views it as a test of freedom of navigation and the rules-based order. The island chain strategy is at the heart of Washington's long-term plan to contain China's growing maritime reach. At the same time, China's expansionist drive stems from a deep strategic anxiety, the fear that a blockade or trade halt could strangle its economy. The Philippines has stood firm in defending its sovereign rights over its exclusive economic zone, making it far more than a bystander. Few countries carry as much geostrategic weight as the Philippines in today's Indo-Pacific rivalry. Now the country stands at the center of a high-stakes power struggle where every close encounter at sea carries the risk of an unintended conflict. Far from being a mere pawn, the Philippines is an active player with its own national interests, one whose choices could shape the security and stability of the entire Indo-Pacific. The South China Sea, SCS, is no longer just a busy shipping corridor. It has become one of the most contested maritime regions on the planet. In 2025, an estimated $5.3 trillion worth of global trade, about one-third of all maritime commerce, moves through these waters every year. Energy shipments from the Middle East to East Asia, critical raw materials heading toward industrial hubs, and consumer goods bound for ports from Los Angeles to Rotterdam all depend on the safe passage of these sea lanes. Whoever can shape the rules in this aquatic crossroads effectively gains a hand on the global economy's throttle. For both the United States and China, influence over these waters is more than a prestige project. It is a matter of economic and strategic survival. The US views China's rapid island building and militarization as a direct threat to freedom of navigation, a principle that underpins global trade and maritime law. Washington responds with freedom of navigation operations, FONOPs, sending naval vessels close to Chinese claimed features to demonstrate that international waters cannot be claimed unilaterally. These patrols are meant to assure allies like the Philippines and signal that U.S. defense commitments in the Indo-Pacific remain ironclad. China, on the other hand, perceives these very patrols as acts of containment, aimed at constraining its rise. From Beijing's perspective, the U.S. presence, often in coordination with allies such as Japan, Australia, and the Philippines, feels like a ring of steel, hemming in its coastline and threatening its vital sea lanes. That perception helps explain China's relentless push to construct and fortify artificial islands, deploy advanced missile systems, and assert administrative control over disputed reefs and shoals. The Philippines sits at the heart of this strategic vortex. Its archipelagic geography straddles key choke points like the Bashi Channel and the northern gateway to the SCS, making it a natural springboard for either power's maritime strategy. As Manila deepens defense cooperation with Washington, while still maintaining significant economic ties with Beijing, it becomes both a prize and a flashpoint in the wider great power rivalry. The Philippines' choices, whether in defense pacts, port access, or energy exploration, will shape how this competition unfolds, influencing not just regional security, but the future of global trade and maritime law. China's spectacular economic ascent is inseparably tied to the South China Sea, which acts as the country's maritime lifeline. Roughly 80% of China's energy imports, including crucial oil and natural gas shipments from the Middle East and Africa, flow through this narrow stretch of ocean. In addition, about 40% of all Chinese trade, from high-tech exports to raw materials, passes through these same lanes. Any disruption here could choke Beijing's manufacturing base, drive up energy costs, and undermine its ambitions as a global economic powerhouse. This deep dependence has shaped a more assertive and sometimes aggressive Chinese posture. From Beijing's perspective, the ability to control or at least secure the SCS is not optional. It is an economic and national security imperative. That urgency explains why China continues to enforce sweeping territorial claims based on its controversial 9-dash line, a boundary that was expanded to a 10-dash line on official maps in 2013. These claims, which cover the vast majority of the South China Sea, have been consistently rejected by international courts, including the 2016 Permanent Court of Arbitration ruling that favored the Philippines. Beijing has gone beyond maps to create facts on the water. It has reclaimed and militarized reefs, building runways, harbors, and missile installations. The environmental cost has been immense. A 2025 report from the Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS, estimates that up to 4,648 acres of coral reef have been destroyed since 2013 due to China's massive dredging and island building operations. Scientists warn that this loss threatens marine biodiversity across the region, from fish spawning grounds to delicate coral ecosystems. For China, however, the calculus remains stark. Control of the South China Sea is not just about prestige or nationalism. It is about economic survival and geopolitical leverage. By fortifying and claiming these waters, Beijing aims to secure its energy lifeline, shield its trade routes, and project power deep into the Pacific. Yet in doing so, it intensifies tensions with neighbors and the wider international community, making the SCEs both the engine of China's rise and the potential flashpoint for its greatest strategic risks. The island chain strategy is at the heart of Washington's long-term plan to contain China's growing maritime reach. First articulated during the early Cold War and now repurposed for 21st century competition, the concept envisions a series of defensive arcs, the first, second, and third island chains, that can limit the Chinese Navy's ability to break out into the wider Pacific. The first island chain is the most critical of these barriers. Stretching from Japan's Kuril Islands down through Okinawa, Taiwan, and the northern Philippines, and onto Borneo, it forms a natural maritime wall that U.S. forces can monitor and, if necessary, use to restrict Chinese naval and air movements. Within this architecture, the Philippines is a pivotal hinge. Its position astride the Luzon Strait and the South China Sea makes it an ideal location for military bases, early warning radar, and surveillance platforms.
We talked about how we are co-investing in EDCA sites to support security cooperation, combined training, humanitarian assistance, and disaster relief.
Recognizing this, Washington and Manila signed the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, EDCA, which grants the United States access to strategically located Philippine bases for rotational deployments of troops, aircraft, and pre-positioned equipment. The EDCA not only strengthens the Philippines' own defense posture, but also extends America's forward presence in Asia, creating a dense network of facilities capable of supporting quick responses to any flashpoint, from the Taiwan Strait to the West Philippine Sea.
We have lifted the grounding of our aircraft, and right now they are participating in the Cope Thunder 25-1 exercise.
This strategy was vividly demonstrated in Exercise Cope Thunder 2025, held in April and July 2025. The drills brought together over 2,500 personnel from the U.S. and Philippine Air Forces, showcasing advanced U.S. capabilities such as the F-35 stealth fighter jet operating from Philippine soil for the first time. The exercise focused on alliance preparedness and joint interoperability, proving that the two militaries can conduct integrated operations under combat-like conditions. For Washington, it sent an unmistakable signal. The first island chain is alive, active, and ready to deter Chinese expansion. By weaving together geography, legal agreements like EDCA, and high-profile joint exercises, the United States is turning the Philippines into a linchpin of its Indo-Pacific strategy. For Beijing, this represents more than a military challenge. It is a direct attempt to contain its blue water ambitions. China's expansionist drive in the South China Sea, SCS, stems from a deep strategic anxiety. The fear that a blockade or trade halt could strangle its economy. With roughly 80% of its energy imports and 40% of total trade flowing through this maritime artery, Beijing sees unchallenged access as essential to national survival. To secure that access, it has embarked on a long-term campaign to transform disputed waters into de facto Chinese territory. Central to this effort is the salami slicing tactic, making small, incremental advances that individually fall below the threshold of war, but collectively amount to sweeping control.
Over the past decade, this has included harassment of foreign fishing and supply vessels, the construction of artificial islands outfitted with runways, missile batteries, and radar facilities, and the steady expansion of administrative authority under the guise of environmental management. Each step gradually changes facts on the ground and makes China's presence harder to reverse. A striking example.
Forward distance, forward distance, Starboard clear, sir. Starboard clear.
A striking example came in September 2025, when a Chinese Coast Guard spokesperson confirmed that their forces had used water cannons and control measures against Philippine vessels near Scarborough Shoal. According to the Philippine Coast Guard, the encounter damaged one of its ships and injured a crew member, underscoring the human risks behind these maneuvers. Around the same time, Beijing declared a national nature reserve over the shoal, framing it as environmental stewardship while effectively tightening its administrative grip.
Through these steady encroachments,
Military, legal, and environmental, China is effectively rewriting the map of the South China Sea. Each reef turned into a fortress, and each patrol reinforced with forceful control measures strengthens Beijing's capacity to dominate vital sea lanes and potentially dictate shipping access across a region responsible for more than $5 trillion in annual global trade. For neighbors like the Philippines, and for the global economy at large, these moves are not just isolated incidents, but part of a calculated strategy to bring the entire South China Sea under Chinese sway.
the Philippines has stood firm in defending its sovereign rights over its exclusive economic zone, EEZ, drawing strength from a landmark 2016 international arbitral ruling at The Hague. That decision not only invalidated China's sweeping historical claims, but also confirmed that key features including Scarborough Shoal fall within waters where the Philippines enjoys exclusive rights to fish and exploit resources. This legal victory remains the cornerstone of Manila's maritime policy, shaping both its diplomacy and its actions at sea. Armed with this legal mandate, the Philippines has consistently challenged China's attempts to tighten control. In September 2025, Manila lodged a strong protest after Beijing announced plans to designate Scarborough Shoal as a national nature reserve. Philippine officials condemned the move as a justification for China's control over a maritime feature that is part of the territory of the Philippines, underscoring that environmental claims cannot override an international court's ruling. Beyond legal and diplomatic efforts, Philippine Coast Guard and Navy patrols have become more robust, escorting fishermen and conducting regular missions to assert sovereignty. These operations are often met with Chinese water cannons, shadowing maneuvers, and even collisions. But Manila continues them to demonstrate presence and protect livelihoods. By reinforcing alliances with the United States, Japan, Australia, and Canada, and participating in joint maritime drills, the Philippines strengthens its deterrent capacity and international support. In standing its ground, the Philippines is defending far more than fishing grounds.
It is upholding the principle that international law, not coercion, determines maritime rights. Every protest note, patrol, and joint exercise sends a message to both Beijing and the world. The West Philippine Sea is not up for unilateral takeover, and the rules of the global maritime order must be respected. Few countries carry as much geostrategic weight as the Philippines in today's Indo-Pacific rivalry. Its location at the heart of the South China Sea, where the Pacific Ocean meets the Indian Ocean's key shipping lanes, makes it indispensable to both Beijing and Washington, albeit for different reasons. For China, the Philippines represents a potential safeguard for its economic lifelines. Roughly 80% of China's energy imports and 40% of its overall trade traverse the South China Sea.
Friendly ties with Manila would help guarantee uninterrupted trade flows and blunt the impact of any US-led blockade.
Just as important, Beijing sees Philippine cooperation as a way to break the first island chain. the defensive arc of U.S. allies that currently constrains China's naval reach into the wider Pacific. For the United States, the Philippines is equally critical, though from the opposite perspective. The archipelago serves as a forward outpost for power projection, allowing U.S. forces to quickly respond to flashpoints from the Taiwan Strait to the West Philippine Sea.
Next day in Washington, a first step is taken in the direction demanded by Dewey as the United States and the Philippines sign a mutual defense treaty.
The 1951 Mutual Defense Treaty remains the bedrock of this partnership, and Washington has explicitly reaffirmed that it applies to armed attacks on Philippine forces and public vessels anywhere in the South China Sea. Coupled with the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, EDCA, and expanded joint exercises, this commitment anchors America's broader Indo-Pacific security architecture.
In short, both powers need Manila on their side. For China, cooperation could secure vital trade arteries and weaken U.S. containment. For the United States, alliance with the Philippines ensures freedom of navigation and a strategic check on China's maritime ambitions. As tensions rise, the Philippines' choices will reverberate far beyond its shores, influencing the balance of power across the entire Indo-Pacific. The Philippines now stands at the center of a high-stakes power struggle where every close encounter at sea carries the risk of an unintended conflict. As maritime incidents multiply, the danger of a miscalculation triggering a larger military clash grows. Manila faces the delicate task of balancing deep economic ties with Beijing, its largest trading partner, against a long-standing security alliance with Washington, which provides critical defense guarantees and advanced military cooperation. The direction of this strategic competition will shape not only the Philippines' own security and prosperity, but also the stability of the entire Indo-Pacific region, influencing shipping routes, energy flows, and regional alliances for decades. Far from being a mere pawn, the Philippines is an active player with its own national interests. By assertively defending its maritime sovereignty, leveraging international law, and deepening alliances with the United States and like-minded partners, Manila has turned itself into a key fulcrum in the global contest for influence over the world's most critical maritime choke point. The choices it makes, whether in diplomacy, defense cooperation, or resource development, will help determine whether the Indo-Pacific remains a region governed by rules and open trade, or one dominated by power politics and coercion. If you like the video, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe our channel for deep analysis of contemporary issues.